There's a fear that's so quiet. It it almost feels like background noise. You don't remember when it started, only that it seems like it's always been there. It's like a suspicion, a tension, a hum under the surface of every connection that you really care about. And it goes like this. It says, if they saw the real me, would they still stay? Now, this voice doesn't scream, it doesn't panic necessarily, it just nudges you. And so you adjust, you stay light and helpful, you stay agreeable, you offer what you think they'll like before they even ask. And it's not because you're being fake, but it's more so because the real you has always felt at risk. See, somewhere along the way, you learn that performance keeps people close. And that love could be protected only if you earned it. That connection could be secured if you stayed likable. That belonging could be maintained if you kept giving them this version of yourself that never needed too much. And so, without ever choosing it on purpose, you became a performer. Not on a stage, but in the conversations and the relationships that you're in every space that you hoped that you would be accepted and kept. You became who they needed you to be before they could even ask. And you smiled through the discomfort. You were praised when you were hurting. You helped when you felt empty. And you translated yourself into safety. And for the most part, it worked because they stayed, they leaned in, they loved what you gave them. And you started to disappear inside the performance. This is what brought me to the work that I do here at Bintegers. You see, I've spent years learning what it means to live like with integrity and intimacy. I wanted it, but I couldn't figure it out. And it wasn't the polished kind of me. It was a version that was brandable, if you will. It was the kind that said, if I want to be real, it's going to cost me approval. See, for me, integrity meant staying aligned with who I am on the inside and how I show up on the outside. And intimacy, for me, means refusing to disappear in order to be close. It means letting others see what's under the surface when it's not polished. Here at Bintegers, I don't want to teach performance. I want to help people practice what it's like to be present. Because the parts of us that are hidden, they were never too much. They were just too sacred for places that only celebrated what we could offer. So let me tell you about my truth now. See, I think we perform because we're scared. Not scared of being alone per se, but of being left behind. We don't believe that the real us is lovable. We're afraid that it's actually forgettable. That if we stop being useful, funny, or emotionally intuitive, supportive even, articulate, beautiful, high achieving, if we don't be any of these things, the connection will evaporate because so many of us, we've been loved for what it is that we bring, but not necessarily for who we are. See, we've been chosen for our glow, but never met in our grief necessarily. And so we rehearse and we polish and we deliver and we keep this version of ourselves in hiding. That's the real part. And so here's the part I think that no one really sees from the outside, and that is that this constant performing is exhausting. It's not because it's fake, but more so because it's constant. It doesn't leave room for confusion or contradiction or messiness. It doesn't allow for days when we were feeling empty or unsure or quietly just in pain. Because in performance mode, everything is a calculation. What version of me do they want is what we ask. And so we become fluent in emotional translation. We read people like scripts and we offer the lines that we think they want to hear. And slowly, without ever realizing it, we forget our own voice. This is the pain, I think, that builds high-functioning people pleasers like I was. See, in those who are always on, we have to be composed and easy to be around, because being easy to be around often means that we've erased the parts of us that are really hard to hold. Not because they're shameful necessarily, but more so because no one ever showed us how to bring those parts forward. And so we made a choice to stay loved, even if it means being hidden, or to show up at high cost to risk. See, there comes a point when the applause starts to feel hollow, when the praise doesn't necessarily land, and when "you're amazing" echoes in the room, but no one actually knows what we're actually carrying. Because being celebrated for the version of us that isn't fully us isn't connection, it's more containment. See, we're admired, but we're never met. We're respected, but not really understood. We're visible, but not in the way that's real. And slowly this starts to sting. Not because the love is gone, but because it never quite made contact with the parts of us that have been waiting to be seen. And I think this is where the resentment grows quietly. It's not towards them as much as it is towards ourselves. Towards ourselves for never interrupting this pattern, for playing the role so well, for becoming the character that they love while leaving the part of us that's true behind. So we find ourselves exhausted after being on for consistent periods of time, just not only socially, but relationally, even with those who are closest to us. Because performance is not just the charm or the charisma. At the heart, it's really about control, right? If I can control how I'm seen, maybe I can control if they can stay. But the cost is really steep, isn't it? See, we start to feel like this phantom pain from not being touched and seen and understood. And I mean, no one really knows how to hold us because we've never actually let them see what's underneath all of this. And no one even offers support because we've never given them the chance to notice us in our need. And no one really gets to asking the deeper questions because we have answered every shallow one with convincing polishness. And when the loneliness starts creeping in, it's then that we start to wonder if it's too late. Too late to show our truth, too late to be anything but impressive, too late to be messy without losing what we worked so hard to earn. And maybe it's not too late though. Maybe this is just the edge of our story that we're telling. The moment where something inside of us begins to whisper, I want to be loved without having to earn it. Not because I don't value effort, but because I'm just tired of believing that effort is the only way to stay close. See, we want presence, but not performance. We want intimacy, and not necessarily the image we've been holding. We want to feel like someone sees behind the brilliance that we present and still choose to say. But this desire comes with a risk. Because if the real us steps forward, what happens if they flinch? What happens if they don't know what to do with our silence or our unfiltered anger or this sadness that doesn't always seem resolved? How about our certainty that there may not be a silver lining? What if our realness makes the connection feel wobbling? Or what if it breaks? See, these aren't rhetorical fears. These are real fears. Because performance has always felt safer than abandonment. And if being ourselves might cost the relationship, we might rather lose them than ourselves, right? This is I think the heartbreak of self-abandonment. It's that we stay close to others by moving farther from ourselves. And eventually the space between who we are and who we show up as becomes really unbearable, and we start to feel it in our body, in the quiet moments when no one's watching. It's like a tension that we can't really name, a grief that we can't really locate, a numbness that settles in because we've been edited for so long. And here's the worst part. the longer that we keep performing, the harder it becomes to believe anyone would stay if our mask actually came off. And so we keep rehearsing and we keep showing up as expected. We keep managing everyone's perceptions. And that's not because it feels good, but because it really feels safer than being left behind. But even as we keep performing, there's this part inside of us that begins to wake up. It's a part that's been tired and in pain. And this part, I think, whispers something like, I don't want to earn love anymore. I'd rather just receive it. And there's like a shift that begins quietly. It doesn't look like defiance. It doesn't sound like rebellion, but it begins in these small expressions of refusal. So we stop answering right away, for example. We maybe let the silence stretch out a little longer when we pause before performing. We breathe before we agree instinctively. And in that pause, something sacred surfaces. What if I don't give them what they expect? What if I can still belong here? I mean, it's not a hypothetical, it's a test. One that our nervous system has trained for since childhood, right? Because here's the truth. When love is earned through performance, realness feels like a betrayal. And when you've only been kept for your shininess, your shadow feels kind of dangerous. And when your value has always been transactional, well, softness feels a lot like a liability. But the lie is this. The lie is that your brilliance is the price of your belonging. That your composure is what makes you lovable. That your offering is what makes you stay worthy, if you can make that a word. But it's not. And the more you pause, the more you disrupt this illusion. But that disruption will shake everything. Not because you're doing something wrong, but more so because you're undoing what you never should have been required to in the first place. And people may not know how to respond. They've grown accustomed to this version of you that knows exactly what to say. The version of you that keeps things light and easy. The version of you that wraps your truth in just enough polish to be palatable. And when that version softens, when it steps backwards and when it lets itself be seen in its unfiltered state, not everyone will stay. I mean, not everyone should stay though, right? Because the ones who need to keep performing were never connecting with you in the first place, were they? They were actually connecting with the version of you that made them feel comfortable. And that's not intimacy. That's arrangement. So when you stop performing, some things will most likely start falling apart. But my encouragement is let them. Because performance might keep you liked, but it will never help you feel loved. And what you're seeking now isn't applause as much as it is being present. Someone who stays even when your timing is off, even when your light begins to dim, even when you bring the truth in its raw and unedited form. The kind of presence that won't be impressed, but will be engaged. It will be with you, not just around you. And to find that, you'll have to risk being found. And that risk is real, so don't rush it. See, you don't have to tear the mask off all at once. You don't have to over-explain the soft parts. You don't have to announce your honesty like a performance of its own. You can actually just let it be a slow, gradual, incremental process. One unedited sentence, for example, or one unmet expectation. One moment where you don't have to translate your truth into what's easier to hear. So these moments, I think, really matter. They start to teach your body something that it never believed was possible. And that is, I can be seen and still kept. This is how intimacy, I believe, begins. Not with performance, but with presence. not with perfection, but more so with permission. And not with doing more, but with being more fully here in this moment. And the people who meet you there, they won't flinch, they won't recoil, they won't look for the edited version again. Those are the friends who are worth building with. Not because they tolerate your truth as much as they actually recognize it and invite more of it to them. See, healing begins the moment that you let someone see the parts of you that are not performing, and when you choose to stay in that moment. And even if they pause and they don't rush to reassure you, even if the moment feels raw and exposed and edited, still through all those moments you stay. Because this is how we build trust again. Not in them, but in yourself. Trust that your presence does not need polishing. Trust that your feelings don't need to be formatted. Trust that you are worthy of connection and not just consumption. See, there's a new story being written now, and it begins with the line, I am still enough. I'm still enough when I'm not performing. Not because you've stopped caring, more so because you've stopped bargaining. See, you no longer shrink to stay close. You no longer soften to stay safe. You no longer translate your soul just to keep things easy. You show up as is now. And that showing up, it doesn't demand that others stay. It simply says, if you're here, let it be with all of me, or not at all. Now there's a loss in this, yes. The loss of imagined closeness, right? The loss of relationships that are built on a role instead of reality. The loss of admiration that came from only offering the best parts of yourself. But that loss is the clearing ground, if you will. It's making room, it's making room for relationships that can hold more, for friendships that ask deeper questions, for moments that feel unfiltered and therefore real. And you stop being this curated version of yourself and instead you start being a whole human again. A human who is messy and honest and present. It doesn't mean you abandon grace though, right? It doesn't mean you reject kindness. It means that you are no longer weaponizing either of those against yourself. And you no longer use charm to keep the peace. You no longer use helpfulness to avoid your own emptiness. And you no longer use productivity to hide your loneliness. No, now you bring the thing you feared would drive people away. You bring it to the front and you learn slowly that it is it's the very thing that people have been waiting for all along. This is your reclamation. You're no longer asking, what version of me will keep them? Now you're asking, what version of me feels like home for myself? Because love requires you to be there present. It's not a theater. And you're not an actor anymore. You're a person who's deserving of being met, not managed. So today, if you feel the fear rising, the letting go of the performance that it's going to cost you, like everything, I want you to remember this. Remember the people who only stayed for your mask. They were never actually there with you. They were there for your effort. So let them go with grace. Let the applause fade. Let the polished version of you rest. And listen instead for the sound of your own voice returning in its unedited, shaky, true form. You've never been too much. You've only been too hidden. And now you're coming home to yourself. I hope this has served you well. Let me know your thoughts, questions in the comments below. I look forward to connecting and engaging with you.